So, everyone, hopefully you guys can hear me. John Delino with Abnormal Security. I cover just public sector, but we have about 10 team members in Texas that covers all the verticals. Appreciate you guys coming. We're going to talk about abnormal security, how we're able to protect organizations from an email security perspective, and how we partner with CrowdStrike, as mentioned, to help really strengthen y'all's security posture around identity as well. So I'll do a brief intro on who Abnormal is for people that don't know. And then Denton Henry is going to go through a few slides and a couple of demos on how we protect an organization in a unique way. So Abnormal Security is a cloud-native email security platform that leverages behavioral data science and artificial intelligence to look for unique communication within an organization. So we're not an email gateway, right? So we're not a Proofpoint, Mimecast, or what have you. We protect an organization in a different way. So we're an API based. We integrate in less than a minute. It's 3 clicks if you're a Google shop, maybe 5, right? Google's a little bit different. But we integrate in less than a minute. And once we deploy in a proof of value, we do a 45-day look back to baseline known communication in your organization. We don't rely on indicators of compromise, right? The old traditional way to protect an organization is they have to know what's going on, right? They're looking for the known bad. We understand what the known bad is. It's on a threat feed, a threat list, and they block those type of attacks. So threat actors have gotten sophisticated. So in the last 10 years or so, they're leveraging social engineering and AI in the past, 12 to 9 months to really enhance the way that they're able to infiltrate an organization, right? They're leveraging known good sites. They're compromising third-party vendors that you guys deal with every day. And so those will usually pass Senator authentication. And that's how they get into an organization, right? I think the FBI study in 2023 showed that almost $3 billion was attributed to business email compromise type of attacks around advanced email attacks. Abnormal Security is able to stop those at these larger and smaller organizations. So Denton is going to go through kind of a quick story on Abnormal and then hop into 2 to 3 examples. We'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A to answer any questions you guys have. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah. So I'm Denton Henry. I'm not Scott DeLuke, unfortunately. He couldn't be here today. And CrowdStrike gave us a lot of their time, so we're going to be able to get to do a demonstration here today. I'm going to start off by kind of talking about generative AI. In the last year, a lot of us got introduced to that and ChatGPT and things like that. Is anyone in the room not played with ChatGPT at all? Never touched it? No hands. So everyone's done. You're the only one. Okay, but everyone's touched this in some way, shape, or form, right? And the fact is, lots of the attackers are doing that too, right? It's not just us that are interested in it. So while we can use that to find cool things, help us write some PowerShell scripts to make our jobs easier, whatever that is, attackers are using this to write phishing emails. They're using it to imitate users, valid users in your environment and pretend to be them. Come up with an email that looks like the CEO of this organization, and then I'm going to use that to attack that organization. We've seen tons of examples of these in the news. And the fact is, after these attackers perform these types of attacks, they don't need to hack into your environment anymore, right? Now they have credentials, they have phishing scams that are successful, and they're just logging into your environment. So the way these attacks work is the attacker will find their target. In this case, we'll talk about a bank or an organization like that. They will then find vendors of that organization, and they can use LinkedIn and publicly facing information about those vendors and those organizations and members of that company in the first place to imitate users of that organization. They scour LinkedIn and Facebook profiles, your Twitter page, what podcasts you post about and listen to, and find information that they can use to imitate this user and write a pretty convincing email, right? I can tell ChatGPT, this is what I'm interested in, this is my name, this is who I am, I work with these organizations, can you write me an email to get this invoice paid, to get a password reset, to get something like that done. So how do we fight and attack these attackers? We fight fire with fire. We use good AI to stop bad AI. And that's Abnormal's approach. We use a behavioral AI trained around your email to know what users interact with other users, to know what their normal sign on and sign off and signatures and things like that. What are the things that you and I communicate about? What are the things that I and John communicate about? Probably different, right? So we use that to train individual AI models for your organization, for your individual users to figure out, hey, this looks like it was generative AI that is not actually the user, but it is someone impersonating that user, pretending to be them. And you can kind of see, kind of our approach in here. We integrate with multiple data sources, CrowdStrike being one of those, but typically a lot of things like Office 365, your Teams, your Slack, to figure out what normal communication methods are, what the conversations are like. Are they very casual? Are they very formal? What are the topics being discussed? Is everything planned out in advance, or is there a lot of urgency in every message and everything's kind of last minute, right? And we also can use CrowdStrike to leverage some of the things that they've made their place in the market for, knowing everything about crowdsourcing all that information, right? And so if CrowdStrike can detect an attack or a compromised IP address, or all the attack traffic is coming from here, we can read that data from them and see that an email came from a known bad IP address, a known compromised domain, or something like that, something that's been spotted in other attacks. We can use that to be ahead of the curve. We already know it's malicious. Email comes through. We already knew to block it as soon as it came in. That's kind of how we get some of our threat intelligence is through CrowdStrike. Not all of it. A lot of it is custom tuned around your organization and what we know about you. And here's kind of a chart of kind of what that looks like. So this is actually the first bi-directional integration with CrowdStrike. So we get a lot of great information from them, a lot of great threat intelligence. We also feed what we know to them. When we see compromised emails, when we see compromised domains, vendors, we see attacks, we let them know, hey, this is something that we found from one of our customers. We anonymize that data, so I'm not telling CrowdStrike this, this customer, that your email got pinched. But we bi-directionally integrate that information so that we can work together to kind of crowdsource and protect each other together. So I'm going to get into a quick demonstration of Abnormal, and we'll have some time for questions there at the end. So I'm going to kind of stop presenting here. I'm going to flip over. And John, you think we should talk about integration first? Or you want me to just go in here? Okay, so Abnormal is an API-based approach. So we don't require any infrastructure in your environment. We fully support Office 365 as well as G Suite customers. So if you use Google Mail, we're good with that too. Integration takes about 45 seconds to plug in. It's all API. I just need an account. We'll make a Azure business app or enterprise application, and then you're set from there. Here at the dashboard, I can see both the volume of attacks, and I can set this to a custom range if I want to see that. And then I can also see trending attacks. This is set to the last 30 days, but I've got credential phishing is by and large what we're still seeing the majority of all attack vectors come through, but we do have sections for VIP impersonation, which is also very common, right? Back to kind of the presentation, we're impersonating the CEO. We're trying to pretend like we're requesting gift cards. We've seen tons of these attacks. I still can't believe that people fall for them, but people impersonate the CEO. They say, hey, I'm out at this customer. I need you to get me $300 in Walmart gift cards to make them happy. People fall for that. So we'll kind of cover some of those, but we also do things like payroll and vendor fraud, right? If someone on the vendor side was subject to that attack, and now they're using a compromised email on that side to now ask us to pay an invoice that's going to an attacker's bank account, we want to be able to detect those as well. I'll go into my threat log and talk about a couple of these. Move my little filter there.
And hang on. So these attacks that he's showing, these are all real world attacks that we've anonymized for the demo session. But these are attacks that we've seen in either POV or in production. So to take a step back, how we're integrated is, as Denton mentioned, right? We're integrated via API. And so we're the last line of defense. We're an enterprise application, and we're looking for attacks that have made the end user mailbox. So everything here has gotten past all your security controls, whether you have a gateway like a Proofpoint or MinePass, or Defender with Microsoft, right? So these attacks are what's gotten past current security controls.
Thanks, John. So I'll start here with this email, and we'll just, I'll let y'all read that if you want to. It's an email from Jonathan Green. I can hover over his name and see that we've flagged him as a VIP. This is something that we do automatically. We can, when we integrate, we can get identity information from Office 365 to see his title and say, okay, if you're a chief something, you're a VIP, right? You're probably in the public eye to a degree, and people know about you. And so we're going to put some extra scrutiny on your information there.
It's customizable. We pull it from Azure Directory or Google Directory, but we can customize it if there's other people you want to add as VIPs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you've already created those lists with other tools like Proofpoint, we can import from that as well. He sent an email to Josh. The body of the message is just text. There's no links. There's no attachments. I've got little green flags at the bottom for that. And it says, Josh, can you assist in getting 2 checks out to our vendor? I'm not available. I'll send you wiring instructions. Please confirm you can handle it before noon. Anyone see the attack in there? Not a lot of hands raised. Cool. So I'll scroll up to our analysis overview, and hopefully that's coming through on the screen. Out of 8,400 emails we've seen from Jonathan Green, none of them have ever been sent from this Gmail address. Did anyone catch on that there was a Gmail down there? This is not being sent from his corporate email address. This is his Gmail address. Josh Waters, the recipient of our email, and Jonathan Green, never before previously corresponded over email. Now, that includes the real Jonathan Green, right? His enterprise.com domain at email address. That one didn't correspond with Josh either, not just this phony email address here. The email was flagged about financial request and urgent sentiment. This goes down to what we call natural language detection in here. If I turn on text analysis, it'll show some flags around certain keywords in here. One, it flags on our vendor here, Perlia Systems. It also talks about wiring instructions, which is a financial topic. We've got some urgency about a request before noon and at the moment that we're looking at in there. So a couple things kind of raise the urgency of this message. There are 43,000 other signals that were analyzed as part of this. Overall, I think we look at about 90,000 now. But in this case, these were the ones that were in scope here. And based off all those signals, all those flags, we've determined with 99% confidence that this was not the real Jonathan asking for that. And what we would have done here, and we did do here, is we remediated this. You see a timestamp here, and if I scroll down, this is the same exact timestamp that this was delivered. So as John was kind of saying, it's gone through all the other systems you have in place. This lands in Microsoft, and via our API approach, we start reading the message, making our analysis, making our judgment, and then we would remediate this or leave it if it's a good message. But we've done some math to figure out that takes about 8 seconds for Microsoft to get it in their servers and then deliver it to the mail client. Within that 8 seconds, we're going to detect it, we're going to make our judgment, we're going to remediate it, and it will never land on my iPhone or on my laptop for me to actually read and interact with. So it's that fast.
Yeah, this all happens before you get alerted there's a message in your mailbox.
Yep.
Right. Even though it's post-delivery, we make the determination so fast that it's not, you don't see a message that gets pulled out, right? Before it gets, you guys get alerted there's a message in your mailbox.
I don't need 15, 20 minutes to scan an attachment and make that judgment, and then the user's already been playing with it and replied to it, and now the attacker's gotten what they wanted already. So we're really quick about making that call there. So.
Right, and then not one of those signals will determine that this message is malicious, right? It's a combination of multiple signals that will determine that the message is malicious. So one signal will not, right?
Yeah.
That Gmail will not necessarily block this message, but it's in combination with those other signals that
Exactly.
we found that message was malicious.
Exactly. Maybe that was Jonathan's real email, but the fact that he doesn't correspond with our user, that's another big red flag there. So I'm going to get into a little more advanced one here. Let me see if I can find a good one. I'll use, I think this one's good here. So this is an account takeover example. So I'll kind of preface that here as we go into this. One, I won't trick you this time. This is actually Jonathan's enterprise.com. This is his correct email address. Again, we're sending a message to Josh. This one does have a link in it. So we analyze that link, we follow where it goes, and we see if there's anything malicious on that side. This message looks like it's from a file sharing service. Jonathan's shared a file with you. Here's a link to that, blah, 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 right? So let's take a look at this link. I can click on it here and get a preview of that. It looks like it's a PDF invoice for $1,700, right? So nothing, malicious. There's no, actual code or anything that's executing on this link or anything. Nothing like that. So let's look at the sender analysis, right? This came from Jonathan. We saw it's from his real email address. Something I'll call out here is this delegated user field. This only shows up when a user has delegate access to the mailbox, and that was part of the mail flow, right? Audrey Johnson sent this message on behalf of Jonathan. If Jonathan had sent it himself, this line wouldn't even be here. We do have this flag on a high-risk vendor for Prolia systems. I'll kind of come back to that a little bit later. But the reason that flag is there is over other interactions with this vendor, we have maybe seen a compromise on that side. And so we put a little extra scrutiny on any messages that mention that vendor for a period of time. After about 30 days, we take that down to a medium risk because we really hope it's been remediated on that vendor side. And then after 90 days of no activity, we'll move it back down to a regular risk. The important things here are kind of our IP address and our geolocation, Hong Kong, and this never before seen IP address. So I'll scroll back up to the top. We'll go to our analysis overview. This email address appears to be from Audrey Johnson, our delegate user there. The next line here, impossible travel. For Audrey, we've seen 2 different sign-ins for Slack and O365 that looks like it would have been impossible for her to be in both of those locations. Now, maybe she just turned on VPN and she's watching her Hong Kong Netflix and happened to send some emails out. Maybe that's what happened. But we've got other flags that indicate that's probably not, and we'll get into that in just a second. Also, we got flags for financial requests. It's about, that invoice that popped up in the message. And then we see the reference to the compromised vendor, which again, ups our scrutiny of that for a little bit. So let's go over to account takeover and let's figure out what's going on with Audrey here. Got a couple users here that are presented because they've all had relevant account takeover activity. I'll click on Audrey here, and then I can go over a timeline of this attack here. So again, we've got an API integration with their Office 365. So we see all the sign-in event information. We see geolocations, IP addresses. So I can see that Audrey logged in via an Edge browser in San Francisco, April 1st, 4:02 in the afternoon. Then I can see an Okta sign-in the next day at 8 a.m. And I can see a new browser that I've never seen before, Yandex browser, from Hong Kong. Suspicious sign-in event, rare IP, never seen it before. Maybe that's her watching her Netflix. Let's follow along and see what happens next. Okay, Audrey read this email about invoice payment instructions with her delegate access there. She then moved that to a deleted items folder. Then the next thing is Audrey, in air quotes, set up a new mail rule that's going to delete outgoing messages. This is a very common trick by attackers to cover their tracks. I'm going to delete all the messages that I send so you, the actual legitimate user, don't find them in your outgoing messages and say, hey, I think something's wrong with my account. All right, so they're covering their tracks here. Next, and this is where it gets really sophisticated, right? We've taught users over the years, if this seems suspicious, corroborate that story, right? Call the person and say, hey, did you actually ask me to pay this invoice? This kind of seems suspicious. You don't normally ask me for this, and see if that is really valid. The attacker did that here. They went ahead and they sent a Slack message and said, hey, Josh, have you had a chance to pay this invoice? Jonathan asked me to check in. Then a minute later, they send that email. So Josh has got some confidence that I'm being asked by Jonathan to pay this invoice. I've been asked by his executive assistant to go ahead and get this out the door. So I'm gonna, maybe take some action here. But we're gonna protect that email and make sure it doesn't land there because we know it's an attack. We know this isn't the real Audrey sending that email. Anything you want to add there, John?
No, and so this kind of speaks to our integration in your Azure directory, right? We're going to understand every user in your organization, all the devices they use, what normal IP they use, what normal browser they use. So we have all this contextual data to make this determination. If this message is malicious, if it's really that actual sender or receiver that is getting this message, right? So we have all this information. We don't rely on indicators of compromise. So this went through a gateway because the gateway, it passed all its checks. Sender authentication, no malicious link, no malicious attachment, right? All these checks passed the gateway, but Abnormal was able to see that because of the behavioral data science that we put in on the back end.
So I'll go back to the message here and we see that In this case, because it's an east to west email, it's internal only, it didn't leave. So it doesn't pass SPF, DKIM, or DMARC or anything like that. None of those checks need to happen because it's already inside our network.
Right, and then with a gateway, they're not seeing this traffic because as Denton mentioned, it's east-west. So it's no longer bypassing the gateway, right? We can see that because again, where we're integrated.
Back to what I said before, the attackers aren't hacking in, they're logging in. One last thing I kind of wanted to cover, then we'll open it up for questions, and that is going to be our Graymail offering. So we'll kind of take a break from sophisticated attacks. Graymail is a quality of life feature. That's really a huge improvement for a lot of folks. This is geared around cleaning up your inbox, right? So messages that aren't business related or anything like that. Maybe they're promotional. Maybe John's trying to reach out and set up a meeting, kind of cold calling you or something like that. Maybe, and I've got some examples down here, maybe Ticketmaster is showing you what shows are in town. I know I personally have bought tickets for about 6 or 7 shows this year. My wife and I are excited for. So I want these messages in my inbox, but I just kind of expect my Fidelity account to be on autopilot. I don't really want to mess with that. Got an advisor looking at that. So I want those to go to some promotions folder or newsletters folder or something like that. Get them out of my inbox. That's for my focus tasks. So Graymail protection is going to move those to a promotions folder. We're not going to delete them. We're just going to give your users a clean inbox and let them go and look at those messages in their own time. If I take something out of my promotions folder and I move it back to my inbox, I want to know what shows are coming in town. I'm going to do that. And for me and me only, those are going to get delivered to my inbox. Now, maybe John wants to go to the shows with me, so he's going to do it too. Now I've got 2 users. Maybe he's more interested in the Fidelity information. He likes watching his money grow. So he's going to move those, and they're custom rules for each individual user. But in general, we want to move those out so you've got a focused inbox. Industry standards say that it takes about 10 seconds for a user to open a message and make a judgment on that. Do I want to reply to this? Do I want to delete it? Do I want to move it to another folder that I respond to later? Do I want to make a rule so I don't get these messages anymore? That takes about 10 seconds for a user to make that judgment on what they do. And then maybe longer time if they need to make a rule for that. These are actual metrics from a customer, again, anonymized data and stuff like that. But over a period of time, I think this is a 90-day period here, we saved regular users 822 business hours just by moving those messages out of their inbox. Specifically for their VIPs, their C-level executives, saved 2 full business weeks over 90 days. Give them that time back. So they're just getting the focused stuff. I'll personally say I'm an inbox zero kind of guy. So I like having a clean inbox. I like seeing my focus tasks in there and get all that fluff out of there. And I'll read it when I've got a couple extra cycles. All right. So I promised I would open up for questions after that. Yeah, John, you got anything else?
Yeah, no, that's really it. Again, from an integration perspective with CrowdStrike, that's really around the advanced attacks, the ATO. And so that's when we see an account takeover within your organization, that's where we'll kick off that workflow with CrowdStrike. We do have an out-of-the-box integration with them that's bi-directional, like Denton mentioned. If they see compromised endpoints in their environment and understand that there's a person compromised, they'll let us know so we can kick off workflows on our end to log them out of sessions and make them reset passwords on the email side. There are a lot of things that we need to go through that we don't have enough time on. On the right side of the screen, you'll see knowledge base. That's really, it gives you a lot of contextual data around your environment and your users, right? People base, vendor base, and app base. That's another 20, 30-minute conversation around just the contextual data of your environment. Because where we are plugged in, we understand all applications in your environment, who has access to those applications. Vendor base, we understand all the vendors that you guys use, and it's a federated list of all vendors in Abnormal's community. So we'll understand who's a high risk vendor who's been compromised before, and like Denton mentioned, right, those high risk vendors will add extra scrutiny, but we won't blacklist them, right? Because good communication could still be coming in. We want to make sure that that's added to what we're looking for in certain communications. So this how we integrate in your environment is very similar in POV and in production. So that's another thing that I want to highlight is in POV, we integrate in read only. So we're not interfering with traffic. Denton will show you how quickly we integrate. This is the same thing in production. In production, you give us read write access. so we can actually remediate those threats. In POV, it's read only. So there's no interference of traffic.
These are all the permissions that we ask for. You can read through every one of them. All says read. This one says sign in and read user profile.
Right, this is POV. Yep.
So once I hit accept, the enterprise application gets built. If you wanted to test this out,
You're plugged in, that's it.
Yep, we could send you a link, get you configured. What we typically do is after about a week and a half, we come back and we show you some of the findings, some of the things, the attacks that we would have stopped. Again, we do it in read-only mode, so things that we would have stopped if we were actually plugged in and functioning. And then we leave it up to you to kind of take next steps from there.
Yep, that's
access the portal.
That was the integration. Takes less than, he's done it before, so it's less than 10 seconds for him. But for most people, we walk through the rules, so it's about a minute to integrate into Abnormal, and then a week and a half will show you value because we've already learned your environment. We've done a 45-day look back along with a passive view, and we'll show you all the threats in your environment.
I did an integration with a customer yesterday morning. We had a call at 8:30 and we were all signed off of the call by 8:45. We had scheduled next steps and everything from there already. 15 minutes in and out.
That's all we have. Any questions? We have about 10 minutes for Q&A. Yes, sir.
A couple, one on your vendor database here.
Yeah.
Where is this information learned from? Is it through your system, or are you pulling that from a more general database of other security vendors who are saying this is compromised, we learned it from this? And then secondly, what's the rate of false positives that you get? And then what is the process, the speed of that process to change that false positive reading and get those emails into the inbox?
Great questions. I'm going to go in the order you asked them. So the first one, where do we get the vendor information from? We see the domains that your organization is communicating with, what email addresses are coming through. During that integration, kind of this step 1 and 2 is we're going to do a 45-day look back, and we're going to see who you've been interacting with, and that's what feeds this data point here. So over time, as you continue to deal with more organizations, what is it? The average Fortune 500 has 10,000 vendors that they communicate with. So we know there's going to be a lot, but we read that data from who you're actually interacting with.
So the risk level is not based on all of your clients' learnings. It's just my specific company's number of times that we get email that meets the criteria to be labeled as an email we want to pass on to you.
I'm glad you clarified that. So what I'll show here in this vendor base is I'll kind of scroll down and you can see that we see a vendor compromise here at this point. If you look down here, this says 2 vendor compromises reported by abnormal community. So we anonymize the data, and maybe not saying Prolia systems every time, but if another one of our customers sees attacks from that vendor, we know about that in general, and we add that to our data flow as well.
Then that will uptick the risk level
for that particular vendor. Correct.
So if we see that on our side, internally, we're going to protect you from that vendor as well.
Now, again, we don't blacklist anyone, right? Because we want good emails to come in. We just know that there are high-risk vendors who will add extra scrutiny to those members.
Turn the knob up a little bit while we watch that. And again, like I said, after about 30 days, we assume that compromise, that hole has been plugged. So we'll turn it back down. If we keep seeing attacks, we'll raise it right back up. But after 30 days, we bring them down to medium, and then 90, we go back to a normal level.
And then at the top right, we'll also understand, right there, vendor engagement. We'll also understand who normally from that vendor communicates with who normally in your organization.
IP addresses, locations, things like that. So your second question.
All positives and
the
process and time.
Yeah. So I think we can say Lowe's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lowe's actually plugged this in last year, about 9-10 months ago at this point. And we had them come and speak at our sales kickoff in February. And they let us know that over the first 9 months that they had us plugged in, they had 4 false positives.
4 total.
4 total. They have 140,000 mailboxes.
And another thing I want to add as far as automation. So all these things that you see are all automated, right? So management of abnormal is almost none, right? You're not writing any rules, not setting any policies. And so there's really low management of abnormal. So to go back to the Lowe's example, and he asked because it was anonymized for a while, but now they spoke publicly about it. So Lowe's was a proof point shop. They had 13 FTE managing proof point. When they moved to abnormal, it went to 0.25 FTE. because of the lack of management that's needed for abnormal security.
It's all on autopilot. So great questions. Now, if we do get something wrong, right, we can go through and search and find those messages and release them. We don't give like a digest for the users to go and say, hey, we blocked all this stuff, because they'll click on it and release it, and then the attacks are right back out there. So if we've got enough confidence to block it, we're going to block it and keep it in here. But if we do get something wrong, you can go find it and search and respond. And then you can also make a detection 360 case, which says, hey, you got this wrong. Here's a false positive. We go back and we analyze what we got wrong so we don't get it wrong next time.
Yeah, and you don't have to tell us what we got wrong. You say, hey, you got this wrong. That's the extent of what you need to do. And then we'll investigate why we got it wrong.
So does somebody need to be logged into that, or is there a notification system, STP? How do you notify whatever security person's responsible for this, that mails are showing up in there and he needs to take a look at it?
I don't think I understand the question. Going through here to look at them?
Well, yeah, so if you're quarantining
Yeah.
emails, how does the person who's responsible for unquarantining those emails or validating it should be quarantined know that it's there without logging on and looking at the screen?
I guess the answer is we don't notify you because we see constant attacks. This is a nonstop thing. So
I'm specifically talking about stuff that was the false positive.
Oh, the false positive. So we'll rely on users to let us know, hey, this is an attack that, or this is an email that I was expecting. I haven't seen it, right? And then that's when you can go to search and respond. That's when you can go to search and respond and search for those emails.
So we're all, I don't think you understand the question. We're all constrained, resources, money.
Yeah, right.
I don't have somebody that can sit in front of the screen and watch for quarantined emails that.
I got you.
Released.
Right.
So there's just no notification system. They're just gonna have to log in and look and see what's there.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to tell you every message because there's going to be a lot of messages that are auto remediated, right? It goes to deletions. So, yeah, I mean, it's when you're plugged into POV, you're going to see the efficacy of abnormal and how accurate we are. There are going to be those few times that we think a message is malicious and it's not, right? It's a false positive. And usually that's when we rely on a user to say, hey, I was waiting for this message. But yeah, you're not going to want to see all the messages that we quarantine because it's going to be in the thousands. So that's one thing we want to do is automate and take that work off of your hands, right? We don't want you to be scraping through emails all the time. So that false positive rate is very, very low. When there is one, it's usually, again, we rely on the users to tell us, hey, there's a message that we were expecting that we didn't see.
Yeah. The one that I said I plugged in yesterday morning that took 15 minutes, I've already seen about 90 attacks that have come through from that tenant. I don't want to give you 90 notifications in a day. I don't think you want that. I will say that there's another feature that goes with this. It's called abuse mailbox. So if you have users, and you should have users that are trained to, hey, I think this is suspicious, I'm going to report it. We can set up abnormal on a monitored mailbox, you're probably already using, phishing at abnormal.com or something. And we will tighten up the models and make a second pass at that email. And I've got a little time range on that I'll get rid of. But basically the users will report a message the same way that they always have, instead of your SOC team reading those and spending cycles reading those messages and saying, this is spam, this is good, this is good. We're going to do that for you. Make a second pass on them. If we get something wrong, right, maybe it was just on the edge 50-50, and so we released it to the end user. The user reports it, then I can go back, make a second pass, and again, now it's 51%, so I'm going to block it. If that user blocks it, I'll send them a custom response back that says, hey, thanks for reporting that. That was indeed malicious. We remediated it for you. I clicked on the wrong one. But if that was part of a larger campaign, like this user here, Luke, at the top, he reported it. It went to 3 other users. I'll remediate it for all 4 of them. So yeah. I'll only respond back to Luke and say, thanks for reporting it, but I'll clean it up for everybody.
Yeah, one of the largest school districts here in Houston mentioned that the network admin there would spend anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day triaging user-submitted phishing emails, right? And she would have anywhere from 100 to 125 messages every morning to go through. When we implemented Abuse Mailbox, it went down to 0 because we're doing the triage of those user-submitted phishing emails. We integrate with KnowBe4 also, so if you have like a KnowBe4 or some type of phishing simulation, we'll understand that those are phishing sims, and so we'll let those through. but we'll still monitor the phishing mailbox so we can automate those responses for you. So any other questions? I know you had,
That was my question.
that was your question. Okay.
What was your question?
You mentioned that this is last line of defense. Why not the first line of defense?
Well, because we're remediating messages once it hits end user mailbox. So we're not a gateway. So your MX records have to be pointing either Microsoft or Google, or if you have a gateway, point to the gateway. So we're not in line. We're not interfering with traffic. We're just watching and reading the messages in memory and making the determination once it gets delivered to the mail store. Again, in seconds. So we're post delivery, but it's before you get a notification that there's a message in your mailbox.
This product aimed to small business, medium, or enterprise?
Everything.
Everything. Like, so I have a state agency that's 100 individuals, and our largest customer is 600,000 mailboxes. And like I said, Lowe's just rolled this out, what, 4 months ago?
Lowe's, I think it's like 9.
9 months ago, yeah. So we have over 500,000 mailboxes that we help.
We have 10% of the Fortune 100?
15.
15 now. We're going up. But we've also got tons of small businesses that use it for 100 mailboxes, 200 mailboxes, whatever that looks like.
My personal email box, I like that.
I'm sure Johnny can get you a quote for that, yeah.
You wouldn't want that quote for.
One user.
Yes.
Does this work with a hybrid environment, or is it just strictly Exchange Online?
It would work. So like Exchange on-prem and online, or? I don't think so. We don't support Exchange on-prem.
Now,
Oh,
so I will say, if you have Exchange on-prem and it pushes to an O365 mailbox at the end, we'll see that.
Yes.
But if it's strictly on-prem, then no.
We'll plug into the O365 part of it though.
Okay.
So, yes.
You have detectors for extended amount of personal information, or GDPR, or credit card data for complying with CCI requirements?
We can certainly detect those things in the body of the message. We're mostly focused on like attacks. So we're not a DLP in that we would say, hey, this email contains 4,000 socials and that shouldn't leave the organization. We're not going to do that. We do plug in with things like ForcePoint that might be able to help there. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, we do have some cool announcements happening next week at RSA, because that's when people make cool announcements.
Yes.
So we are extending past inbound email security, but that's our core solution right now. That's where we want to concentrate. But we do have some announcements that you guys should be looking out for, that we're extending our product offering next week. So.
We've got about 7 minutes left. Go ahead.
This also scrub outbound email as well?
No, it's we're inbound email for now. Yep. But that's the great thing about Abnormal. We are constantly changing. We have a lot of product enhancements, and again, I can't say that. These announcements are always
Set up a subscription
TBD.
on
Yeah,
your Google
I don't
for
wanna
abnormal security, and you had one.
So, will we have access to this dashboard?
Yeah.
And can we do any decisions on there, or?
So in a POV, right? So when we plug in for a POV, like he showed you, it takes about 4 days to build the behavior models for your environment. And then that's what we ask for, about a week and a half for us to meet again. Then we'll give you our findings report. And at the end of that call, we'll give you access to the portal for about 2 to 3 weeks, so you can get a feel for how to manage Abnormal. And then, but yes, once you're in production, you have access to it. But in POV, we give you access after the first care report. And so it's read only. You can take action on it on your portal, right? And that's what some people do in POV, right? Because it's all read only. It's all would remediate. But then once you go into production, it's all automatic, because we get read-write access at that point.
Is this license per user,
Per mailbox.
per mailbox?
Yeah. We have so I will say with
For heartbeat, I think is the actual
Yeah,
term, because we care about human mailboxes, not
shared
invoices.
mailboxes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I will say for a small percentage of customers, right, the education, higher ed, and K through 12, we still license for the students, but it's at a fraction of what an enterprise license would cost. It depends. It's all tiered, right? So whether it's 200 mailboxes to 100,000. There's tiered licensing models and there's different modules you can add. So, I'm sorry?
Do you have any pricing charts for the?
Pricing chart? No, that's where DataVox comes in, and we'll, once, you want to see that, they can, get you that information. But I will say we're cheaper than Proofpoint most of the time, and we're in line with everyone else. But the value is a lot more, and it shows in the POV, right? Because again, when we plug in, we want to plug in with your current solution in place, because we'll show you what's getting past those current solutions.
We want the POV.
So I know we're over on time, so, or almost, never mind, we got 4 minutes.
We're good. Last call. There you go.
You mentioned you have a state and local government,
Yes,
so I'm assuming everything stays in the US?
yes. Yeah, so one thing I want to add is we don't store your data, right? And so when we're reading your messages in memory, and so if there's a malicious message, we store the metadata, but not the body of the message.
IP addresses, stuff like that, but we don't ever actually store the full message.
Program copy sites.
Cool.
Yeah, we're downstairs. If you guys are interested in doing a POV, let us know. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, everybody.